They've come in their tens of thousands, many of them wearing these white ribbons, the symbol of the opposition movement. Similar scenes are also being witnessed in towns and cities across the country. People are out to contest the results of this year's parliamentary elections that many feel was heavily rigged in favour of the ruling party, United Russia. Most of these people out here in Moscow have never demonstrated before. They represent the disenfranchised middle class, who this time feel that their voices need to be heard more so than ever before. After violent clashes on Monday night between police and protesters, people here are wary of confrontations. They say that they do not want to have a revolution. They're looking for political evolution instead. They want their leaders to be accountable to the people rather than the other way around. They're asking for dignity and justice. The front line of anti-Kremlin protests. A crowd of activists struggles to break through police on their way to the Central Election Commission. A spontaneous action after an organised rally. They insist the vote was rigged in favour of the ruling party. They want the results cancelled. Well, discontented with just one protest in the centre of the city, hundreds have taken their arguments with United Russia out onto the streets. But the authorities were well prepared. Within minutes, the city centre was on lockdown. Dozens were arrested.
Well, we can now go live to Neave, who is in Moscow. Neave, as we were saying, somewhat unprecedented protests nationwide. I understand not much has happened in Moscow yet, but in Vladivostok we're hearing people are gathering. Can you tell us more about it and tell us about the momentum behind these protests?
Absolutely. Well, we've got about 3 hours before the main protest here in the Russian capital starts, but we have learned that a relatively big demonstration in Vladivostok has already happened. A crowd of around 500 people gathered there to contest Sunday's parliamentary election. As I mentioned in that report, more than 80 towns and cities across the country have also said that they will be holding similar protests, but the largest will be here in the Russian capital. Crowds of more than 30,000 people are expected here on Bolotnaya Square. There is a possibility of another smaller demonstration on Revolution Square, very close to the Kremlin. The authorities initially said if that went ahead, then there would be a crackdown by the police and potentially arrest. But what they've now said is that if anybody arrives at that square, they will be carefully chaperoned here to Bolotnaya Square. No sign of any arrests or any kind of violence in Vladivostok, and that does seem to bode well for other protests nationwide. But the authorities here most certainly are not taking any chances. There are tens of thousands of police on standby, and you can probably see the military trucks behind me. They're troops from the Interior Ministry. They are on guard to make sure that the day goes without any sign of trouble. And we gather also that water cannon are on standby too. As I said, several hours to go yet before the protests begin, but mass crowds are expected.
Since the 90s, Russia's been fighting armed Islamist organizations throughout the North Caucasus. We're on the road into the mountains to a village that's been the site of increasing tensions. Magomed's son is buried in the local cemetery. His death is one of a catalogue of killings across the Republic that threatens to inflame more violence.
Locals say that the methods the authorities are using only act to radicalize some people into joining the rebel fighters, hiding out in the surrounding mountains and forests.
Franek Vachorka is a prominent opposition youth leader, the last not behind bars. At the age of 22, his activism's already cost him his education.
I was expelled from the university. Formal but actual reason of my expulsion was I missed exams. And I missed exams when I was in a prison.
But it hasn't stopped him from protesting.
He's
planned a demonstration outside a prison where hundreds of activists are being held. Several opposition leaders are here, some recently freed. A show of solidarity for those inside.
Well, the police have just given demonstrators a couple of minutes to disperse before they intend to crack down on the groups that have gathered here. There are people being held in this prison that have been told that they could get sentences of between 5 and 15 days. But for 14 people, including 5 former political opponents of Alexander Lukashenko, there could be much stiffer sentences of up to 15 years in jail. The protesters are pushed from the scene, but Franek is followed.
2 guys behind me. I think they are following me and they can detain me now. Because they got, as you see, I stopped and they stopped too.
Okay, we're just going to stop here, so just to illustrate the point.
And the guys...
He's worried he'll be arrested without our camera present. We board a busy bus. The KGB follow.
The authorities are frightened of the opposition. They tried to make this a more open election, but as soon as they saw the opposition had support, they started arresting people.
From the bus to a car, they anticipate arrest at any moment. Their car trailed by vehicles with blacked out license plates. At some point, the KGB speed off. Franek reaches home safely this time. He knows it's no longer a case of if he'll be arrested, but when. Neave Barker, Al Jazeera, Minsk. Drumming up support. Skinheads and masked youths, children and families, even members of the Orthodox Church. They believe they're fighting for the rights of Russians, rights that don't include those from other religions or anyone of non-Slavic appearance.
We're tired of these dirty Caucasians.
In a country that lost 20 million people in the fight against fascism, chilling symbols are displayed with pride. In previous years, the march was monitored closely by the Russian authorities. It was very much a chance for right-wing groups to vent their anger at migrant workers, people that have flooded to Russia from all over the former Soviet Union, people that they say are stealing their jobs. But this year, the slogans are changing. The Kremlin are now finding themselves at the heart of right-wing rage. You need to get airborne to see the real advantage of this kind of form of transport. Moscow is often snarled with traffic and it can take hours to get from one side of the city to the other. The dispute's woken old ghosts, spreading fear and resentment.
But it's precisely the reliability and simplicity of Kalashnikov that also makes it one of the world's most counterfeited weapons.
It's a story of exile and the struggle to rediscover a lost homeland. A story less heard on the streets of modern-day Crimea.
They raced across this colossal square outside the Winter Palace. This was the only part of the city not under Bolshevik control. They were armed and dangerous and looking for a fight. This is what the activists are desperate to save, one of the last remaining areas of woodland and the edge of the capital. But as you can see, the bulldozers made it here first. Activists say an area the size of 2 football pitches has already been destroyed.
Today, Baikonur's a shabby town on the barren Kazakh steppe with an impoverished and dwindling population. But against all odds, economic and political, Russian rockets continue skyward and continue to inspire. Neave Barker, Al Jazeera, Baikonur.